Oh. Wait. It said the host stopped my video.
Sorry, hit the wrong button there.
Oh, okay.
I was
Ready
supposed
to
to
roll?
stop the video, not to stop it. There you go.
Gotcha. There you go. Spotlight. Perfect. All right. Very good. So we left off yesterday at the bottom of Nun Testament base. Today's daf is Ach Samach, so we'll do today's blot. It's Hashem. So we left off. We had a case of we're talking about walls being partitions, and obviously openings are openings. But let's say you have a wall, right? And there's a ladder. So is that ladder a wall or a partition? And we had an opinion of Rabbi Yochanan that said basically you have an option, right? You can have an option to view it as a wall, or you get an option to view it as an opening because there's a ladder, so there's easement and you can get through. So 2 lines from the bottom of Nun Testament Beis, Umi Omar Rav Nachman Hachi, and did Rav Nachman say you have a choice? Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, Anshe Chatzav Anshe Merpeses, if you have people of the yard and a Merpeses. Now they share a space. Now there's a picture, a lovely picture in the art scroll that has this picture. For those of you, so you see at the bottom there's a ladder, right? This is the people; those are the people with the chutzner, with the yard, and there's the people on the second floor that have basically a balcony, and it's attached by a ladder. So that they forgot to go ahead, did not make an eruv, top of Samach Hamad Aleph. If they have in front of them a daka, basically like a little area of their own. In other words, at the bottom of the ladder when they get down. So the people of the ladder are basically an entrance, a separate entrance for them to get on and off. Then Eino Oseris. Then it is not Aser. Now remember, we have a rule. If you have a bunch of members of a chatzir and one person does not join, it ruins it for the rest of them. All right, so you have 2 people here. Now, if at the bottom of the ladder, right, the top people at the bottom of the ladder have like a separate entrance that basically it's only for their specific use. So therefore, that shows the separation between the merpesed on top and the people down below. All right, so you see it's a separation. So then, Eino Seris. If they didn't make an eruv, it doesn't aser the rest of the people of the chatzir. However, imlav. But if it didn't have its own separate space, then Oseris, then it does block it. So you see over here that they don't have a choice, right? In other words, if there is no separate space, then the people are considered, the ladder is considered to be an entrance, right, an opening, and therefore they're all as one. So you don't have an option. So how could you say Rabbi Yochanan, as we saw yesterday, he said you have an option. So my answer is no. The merpeset, which is up here, and the chatzir was not, right? They were not 10 tefachim apart. They were closer. Since they were closer, then they're considered as one, right? Because you don't as much need the ladder. There's not so much separation, and therefore that's the reason not consider one. So my hobby. I understand. So if they're not 10 apart, right, and you didn't make it, then there is no merpeset. Right? In other words, if it's not 10, if there is no entrance, right? What does it make a difference if it's a separate entrance or not? Even if it's a separate entrance, right? They're too close together. They should be considered to be as one. So our answer is no, they're not considered as one. Why? Because basically there's a wall around the merpeset. It's not an open merpeset, right? There's a wall enclosing the merpeset up until, and the opening is less than 10 amos. Since the opening is less than 10 amos between the merpeset and down below and the yard, even if it's within 10 tefachim height, it's considered to be separated because of that wall. The Kevin Davadaka is telling this to the Glomi Hachava. However, if they at the bottom, right? So now if there's a wall, but if at the bottom they have their own entrance, then it shows they want to be on their own and separated. But if not, then they would be considered to be as one. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Kaisel sheritzafa, very similar case, sheritzafa the sulamis afilu biyaser meyaser taras mechitza olav. If you have a wall and there's a bunch of ladders, right? Imagine a bunch of ladders lined up next to one another over the wall, right, on both sides, and they could use a ladder, or maybe the ground is higher and you want to the other side. Even if it's more than 10 amos, it's considered to be a mechitza. It's a wall. It's not considered to be a pass-through because it's very easy, it's lined all the ladders. Rather, it's considered to be a wall. So the Gemara says, Rami Rav Baruna, Rav Yehuda, Yasakash, retired to the Rav Chanina by the Metzaras, the press right? It was a wine press of, right? There's a wine press of Rav Chanina. So Miyamar Shmuel Torres Mechitza Lav. Did he say it's a Mechitza? V'amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel Anshmer Press of Anshi Chatz is Shachov Lo Yervu. Bring the same case we just had. If you have people of a so it's a kasha, right? If you have so we just said in the case if you have a bunch of ladders over there, it's considered to be a wall. But what do you mean? In the case we had where we're past that shares is right above a chutz and there's a ladder in between. If there's at the bottom of the ladder an opening, ain't oseris. But if there is no ladder there, then oseris. Then it asks it. Why? Because the ladder makes it like one. So you see, the ladder is not a mechitza, rather the ladder is a pesach. So my answer is, no, the reason why over there is because that is considered to be as one, and it's not a mechitza, is because the difference in height between the merpeset and the chutzner at the bottom is not as considered to be 10. Right? We are the top wide line. Those of you who are just joining us, the ilog of merpeset. Sorry, I understand. If it's not 10 in between, then kiavi daka havi. If they made a separate entrance at the bottom by the ladder, right? Why would it be separated? Right? They're within 12. So Gemara says no, because over there's an enclosure around the repeses, which shows that that's a different rishus, right? In the cave and avidaka is like mihacha. However, since they go ahead and when if there's a wall and there's basically a separate zone entrance at the bottom, then it will then it's considered to be its own rishus, and therefore it's separated. Fine. New case. We are on the third wide line. Hanu b'nei kukunai the osi the kamed revesim. People from kukunai came from Rav Yosef. Amrulei havlan gava do up and lay me'asin. Says go have somebody make an eruv for our town. So Amrulei Abaye. So he said, Amrulei le Abaye. So Rav Yosef said to Abaye, go ahead and make an eruv that no one's going to yell at you from the base medrash, that there's going to be no shilas on this eruv, right? There's going to be no politics on the eruv. Everyone's going to agree. So what did he do, right? Azal chazal hani bati the pischa lenara. So Amar hani lahavi shir lamasa. Now remember, we have a rule that if you can't go ahead if it's a city of Rabbim, then you can't go ahead and be ma'ariv the entire thing, even if the ends are closed off. You have to leave out part of it, right? We said you had to leave out part of it for our Mishnah. There was in Yehuda, there was a place called Chadasha. 50 people, they left that out. Another opinion says no, you have to leave out 3 chatzeros, so 2 houses each. So the machlok is how much you have to leave out some. So he said, Abaye thought to himself, oh, there's houses by the edge of the river, right, that face, right, and those face the river, they don't face the city. Have those houses be the part that's basically not part of the Eruv, so we're not being ma'ariv the entire city. And then he said, Hada Amar, Ein ma'arvin kula tanan. He says, wait, our Mishnah says, Ein ma'arvin kula, you can't go ahead and be ma'ariv the entire city. Michlauti boy laruve matzi marvi. Then you can infer from there that what? That if you wanted to, you have the possibility to go ahead and make it all included. But how can we do that? The people whose houses are out at the edge of the city that he was going to leave out, their entrances face the river. They don't face the city at all. Since they don't face the city, their Pesach is not into the city. Therefore, they can't even be included if they want to. So in other words, but the only way to exclude people from the Eruv is if it was a possibility for them to be within the Eruv, and then we excluded them to show you that we're not being Ari of the entire city. But if it's people who couldn't be included in the Eruv anyways because their Psachim faced outside the city, they had no entrance and access to the city, then that can't be the part that we leave out. Ella, rather, what did he do? He says, oh, I know what we'll do. Right, we'll go ahead. We'll make windows in the back of these houses. The windows have to be a certain shear. That the windows, the psachim over there, and let me just see. They have to be daled al daled, right, towards the city. Right, they have to be 4 by 4, right, that face the city, and therefore that these windows can basically be go ahead and have the 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim. These windows are considered to be openings for a person to fit through, and therefore it's considered to be part of the city for us to exclude. So in other words, we have to go ahead and put windows in these houses, and then we'll exclude it from the Eruv. And Hadar Amar, then he said, no. He said, no, boy, I don't need it. Because we had this sort of case earlier. We saw this several, where was this case? Where's the Bays? Right, we had a while ago, right? And Chavav and Aleph, right? So approximately a month and a half ago. So we said over there we had a case of Rabbi with the Marav Lahulukul Mechuza, Arisaiso, Arisaiso. Basically, there was in Mechuza, there were a bunch of mavuis, and they were separated by these like ditches that the animals used to go ahead and eat from. And he basically made pockets of Eruvin, right? Each one was their own Eruv. They were not connected. Mishub, here the Beit Torah, because of these ditches of the animals of the oxen. And now the how could you be? They were each one was independent of the other. Therefore, this one was living out the other one, and they were each living one out, and they had ones left out. And the but over there they weren't able to go ahead and be ma'ariv everybody because of these separations of the ditches. So what do you see from over here? That which you leave out does not have to have the potential of being included. So we don't need to make those windows of the houses facing the river, because even though they face the river and they can't be included anyways, that's considered to be being left out, as was illustrated by the case of Rabbi Bar Avua. But then he said Hadar, then he hacked in his head, he says, oh no, Hadar, maybe no. Maybe it's different. Maybe over there the reason why they could have been connected was all the roofs were basically attached. It was just the ditches on the ground for the animals were separating the different mavuis and different chatzeros. So maybe that's why they had they were considered to be leaving out the other ones, because they had connections in the roof. However, Vahani, but in this case, the ones with the houses that face the river, they can't be attached. They can't be attached to the roofs, and therefore we have to go ahead and back to the drawing board, make those windows. And then Hadamar, then he said, maybe another tzad, right? So he's talking his head. So Kavi Namigo boy, maybe I don't need to go ahead and make these windows, right? Why is that? Why don't you have to go ahead and make these windows? Right? There was this straw house that was which was not used to live in, it was used to store straw, right? That belonged to Mar Bar Pupadisa in Pumpadisa. The Shavi Shil in Pumpadisa, and it was considered to be the one that was left out, right? That was the place where that was not included. So Amar. So what do you see from there? You don't need something excluded at all, and therefore the houses don't need to. The houses, even though they face outwards, can be that which is excluded. And go ahead and make sure that they're not going to, hack you up in the base medrash and argue on it. So that was why he had all the whole, shakalatariya back and forth in his head. But at the end, he decided from that case of the straw house that you're allowed to go ahead, and even though something was not really meant to be included, it's something that can be considered left out, and therefore they're able to go ahead and be ma'ariv the entire town. Fine. Now, 2 dots. Elim can also chutzla kir chadash. We said you can't be ma'ariv the entire town unless you leave something out, like the town of Chadasha. So Tanya Amar Rabbi Yehuda Irach Asayisa Yehuda v'Chadasha Shema. There was a town in Yehuda, and Chadasha was the name. Vayuba Chamisha Diurim, and over there they had 50 people. Anashim and Nashim v'Taf Ubahayu Masharim Chacham. V'Hi Haisa Shir. So over there it was a town of 50 people, men, women, and children. And the Chachamim basically used it as the size, as the shear, as the example to become that the amount of shear, the amount of leaving out, the person or community has to leave out if they're going to be ma'ariv the entire city. So, Iboilu, Chadasha Ma'u. What are the inhabitants of Chadasha? If they want to make an Erev around Chadasha itself, so do they need to be Mishayir, leave out something else or part of it? So Chadasha, Kihechdi, you have Yishir L'Gedol. L'Gedol Anami, you have Yishir L'Ktana. So just like there was a large city, and the small area of Chadasha was the area that was considered to be the part that was left out of the area for the big city. So too, when it comes to the small city of Chadasha, the part which they left out was the big city. So Elo Kain Chadasha. Okay, so don't forget Chadasha, because basically it was attached to a bigger city. What about a small town Chadasha on its own? No other areas around it. Can they make an Erev around the whole thing, or do they have to exclude others? So Rav Huna of Rav Yehuda Chadamar Boy Shir. One says it does require a shear. It knows you have to go ahead and cut some out. The part of it, and Rabbi Shimon Omer Shleish Chatzeres. Rabbi Shimon said, no, argues Rabbi Yehuda. He says you don't need to go ahead and have a town of Chadasha. Rather, just 3 Chatzeres, each with 2 houses. And Amar Rav Chama Bar Guria Marav Halach Rabbi Shimon The halacha is like Rabbi Shimon that requires only 3 chatzeros, so 2 houses each. And Rabbi Yitzchak Amar afilu ba'is echad b'chatzer achas. Now, even 1 house or one field or 1 chatzer. One says chatzer achas. What, you only need 1 field and no houses? So ela ema ba'is echad b'chatzer achas. Rather, what he meant to say was even 1 chatzer with 1 house is left out. That's considered to be a shear. And Amar le'abai the Rav Yosef. So Rabbi Yitzchak.
Wait. Get it. Why does a section have to be excluded from the Eruv?
All right. So my understanding is, right, it's a difficult question. My understanding is that the fact that it's a town of the Rabbim, people will forget that the Rabbim is now something which is considered to be, it will be confused with a Rishus HaRabbim. Since it's that of a Rabbim, it will be similar to that of Rishus HaRabbim, and therefore there has to be a part that is excluded. Right. In other words, right. It was something which was a Rabbim and something which is once a Rabbim and now becomes smaller. Right. And they wanted to marry the whole thing, which they could. But right. So then the whole thing becomes a difficulty because basically we're talking about, according to Rashi's Pshat, right, that you have a town which started off as 600,000 people and is now the size of Chadasha, which was 50 people. So that's a little bit difficult to understand. As to the understanding of the pshat in this case of why Chadash is not just considered to be a small private town, and something that's a small private town, never a Rabbim, it can be right. It can be make an error about it. But the same question that you have was bothering me, because the only time we said that you can't be married the whole entire thing is if it was a public town and now it's smaller, and that was defined as Rashi as being more than 600,000, and then became less than 600,000 because then it's no longer similar to the the encampment in the Midbar. So, anyways, he said this halacha, right, of 1 house and 1 chatzir. So Gemara Sabra, is it a Gemara? Is it you taught this, or is it a svara that you want to say? Samarlei, my nafkalim, So what's the nafkalim? So Amarlei. So Gemara is Hey, right? I want to go ahead and teach it and put it in my way to remember it. But is it like a song where there's just words, or is there a reason behind it? And it was a Gemara. So I want to know whether it was just your svara, or is just something that was taught to you without any svara behind it. Fine. Now Mishnah says Misha Haya b'Mizrach. Person was in the east. All right, we'll go according to the Havamina, and then we'll break down the Havamina. So Misha Haya b'Mizrach, a person, let's say, was in the east of town. All right, and he told his son, right, the walkie-talkie, whatever it was, who was on the west side of the town, make me an eruv on the west, outside the city on the west, and he was in the east. Or b'marav, he was standing in the west. He was standing in the Mizrach, and he told his son, go ahead and make me an eruv in the east. So normally now, the way it would work is, you would think, if he's within 2,000 amos, let's say he's on the east side, right? If he's within 2,000 amos of the town, he's allowed to travel to town, and then since he's traveled to town, he can travel to where the sun is on the east side, right? So he said like this: if between him and his house, in other words, the town, is 2,000 amos. But however, the eruv on the west side is more than 2,000. Layer of Yeser, mikan mutter lebeisa v'as le'eruv. Then he's mutter to go to his house because that's within 2,000 amos. But his eruv on the west side is too far, so therefore he can't travel all the way there. He can only basically use his house. But let's say his eruv on the west side was 2,000 amos. Yes, but his house was more than 2,000 away. Asr lebeso mutter le'eruv. Then he's asr to his house, and he's mutter to his eruv. Since his house is too far away, more than 2,000, but the eruv is close enough to him, then the eruv is considered to be part of his place where he's going to be. Now, we will go to ask the question that might be bothering you, because I don't understand. If the house is in between him and his eruv, right? He's in the east and the eruv is in the west. So how could he be within 2,000 amos of his eruv on the west side, but more than 2,000 amos with his house? The Gemara will ask that question. Next one, 2 lines in the bottom.
Can you say that question again?
The Gemara is going to ask the question, so I'm going to speak it out then. Does that work?
Yeah. Sorry.
All right. No, perfect. I was just sort of alluding because I remember when I learned the Gemara, it didn't make sense. I looked everywhere and I just went right there. Then I saw the Gemara ask the question. So let's see. Hanaisin as a ruvo b'iburo shel ir. One who goes ahead and places his eruv in the iburo shel ir, right? What is this? The iburo shel ir. One of the houses that basically are within a karpe for the city. It's within 70 2/3. He hasn't done anything because that area is already considered to be part of the town, and therefore you don't need to establish your eruv as part of the town because it's like your dalad amos, the entire town is down. So therefore, loss of lo klum doesn't mean he has no eruv. It means he didn't accomplish anything, right? If you put it outside the tchum, an amma outside, it doesn't mean it was outside the 2,000. Rather, it was outside an area where he measures, and it was outside the beginning of where you begin to measure. So ma shenizkar hu masid, that which he gained, let's say to the east, goes one there, he loses to the west. In other words, basically, so let's say he puts it 500 feet, right, from where you start measuring. Let's say that's where he puts it. So therefore, you have 2,000 amos to the to the other direction, and then towards the city, you have the 500 to the city. The city is only included as dalad amos, right? The city is dalad amos, right? As we'll soon see, and then he has another 1,500 the other way, or 1,496, right? So therefore, but it comes out that he still has 2,000 each side, so it just gets shifted over. He doesn't gain anything extra. The area that he gains or doesn't gain just shifts. Fine. Now let's see the Gemara. So the Gemara says, "Zok the Gemara top line on Daf Samach Amud Beis on top Kasal Kadaisach Lemizrach Beiso Lemara Beiso." Okay, so let's say we're talking. The guy has a house and he's outside. Let's say he lives. There's no town here. He's just in a house. And when he said in the Mishnah, as I explained, when it said he was in the east, right? Sounds like he was standing in the east, and he told his son on the west, go to the other side of the house and put it over there, right? And Lamara, when it says when he was in the west, it means Lamara Beso. He was standing by his house. So now here comes the Gemara's question, which I tried to just say out before, which it didn't come out clearly. Now, Bishloma, remember, he's on the east and he's putting his eruv in the west, and we say over there, so Bishloma, so I understand how you can have a case of where his house is within 2,000 amos of him, right, which was the first case, but his eruv on the west side, let's say he's standing in the east, right, we'll go with that case, but his eruv on the west side is farther than 2,000 amos away. That makes logical sense, right, because it goes him, his house, his eruv, and therefore the 2,000, amos from where he's standing, ends or is somewhere in between, his house on the other side and towards eruv. So therefore, it's possible to reach his house 2,000, but it's not possible to reach his eruv 2,000. Eruv. Ella, but the other case, if you say he's standing in the east and his house is there in the middle and then his eruv is in the west, hey, menele ruvel al paimama ulabesa yesim mikan hekem. So how could you have his eruv to be within 2,000 amos of him, but his house, which is in between them, beyond 2,000 amos of where he's standing? All right, so that's the question. Reuven, does that make sense now?
I think so.
Right. Right. So there's right. So in other words, if something is on the other side of his house,
right? You're saying it's too far away. You're saying it's too far away for him to be able to go from one side to the other side and actually utilize the entire 2,000 amos on the other side of his house.
Right here. Does this work? Actually, no, this doesn't work. Okay, fine. Yeah, I mean, here. Let's say right here. Actually, let's say here's his house, right in the middle. Okay, and he's standing here, right? Here's on the east, and here's the area places in the west. Okay, now, so that's the Havamina. Right? He's here, there. So one case is if he's within 2,000 hours of his house, but not this, right? Not the west one. So therefore, the eruv, right? He only uses his house as his center position, as his central located. And then the other case, or if he was within 2,000 of this, but wasn't within 2,000 of this. I understand. How could you be, 1,500 away from here if something in between you and that is farther than 2,000? Doesn't make any sense, right? Okay. So we have to put a new definition on east and west. That's the question of the question. So I'm Rabbi Yitzchak. So he says, no, Do you think when it says when he's the east, meaning he's standing on the east side of his house, and he's in reference to the house, and he's telling his son to put on the west side? No, that's not the case. It just meant that if he was standing next to his son, right, his child was next to him, right. So then he's standing over there, and the question is which side his son was on. In other words, they're both. In other words, here's the house. The house is all the way over here, right? And him and his son are either here or here. But both of these cases, that could be that, if the one case is closer, it just means that, this, he was much closer to the town than here. But the other case was he was closer to the Eruv than he was the town. So he was within 2,000 here and not 2,000 there, right? So that was the first teretz, right? And Rava Bar Shila Amar Afilu Tein Lemizrach Beiso Lamar Beiso. If you're going to Kabeisi Ba'achsona, you can even say the other case, but it doesn't mean that we're talking about that the house. Yes, the house was in the middle, but it was referring to when the house was over here, right? And these were basically he was on technically the east side, and this is on the west side. But the situation was this, farther apart than it was, closer to the house. So therefore, it wasn't exact. It wasn't a straight line. Rather, it was a triangle. And therefore, since it's a triangle, it's possible for him to be close to the Eruv, but not close to the city. Fine. Two dots. If one goes ahead and places his Eruv within 70 and 2/3 amos of the town, he really has not accomplished anything. So outside the tchum, right? Don't mean outside the tchum. Rather, he placed it outside the 70, right? The town's the ibura, the amount that we extend out, the 70 and 2/3. And we said ma shenisker hu mafsid. So the last case was that which he gained, right? He on one side he really lost on the other. So ma shenisker v'sulo. He only that which he gained and nothing else. But Tani Lunar Bryce, Hanaisanes Heruva Basechi Bura Shel Ir. We have Bryce that says one who goes ahead and places it in the extension of the city, lost of Loklum, he hasn't gained anything. The son of Chutzli Bura Shel Ir, Afilama Achas, if he put it outside or even one amma, Mishtacher Oisa Amma, right? He gains that one amma. Right, so we see that he does gain. Right, even if he puts it even outside one amma, then he gains one amma in that direction. Right, but he loses. He gets that Why? Because he gains that way, but the whole city, he loses the city. Why? Because the city is considered to be olam esat tchum. The city is considered to be something that the entire city counts as the what's it called? As the measurement. No, normally if you have a city that's larger than 2,000, right? It's 10,000. So you have the entire city. Once you take out the city, right, and then you move it one amma, now you only get 1999 in that direction. You don't get the 10,000 ammas of the city, so you're actually losing. You might gain one amma to the east of it, but you don't have the entire city anymore because now your central is not considered the city. Because remember, the city is like Dalet Amos, right? So your Dalet Amos, you get 2,000 each direction, right? But once you move, you step outside the city, so now the city is no longer your Dalet Amos, right? Now you have your actual Dalet Amos, and you only go 2,000 this way and 2,000 this way. Therefore, you're actually losing out. So Gemara says no, lo kasha. It makes a difference. If you go ahead and you're counting, and when you count 2,000, it ends in the middle of a city, okay? That's where it counts to. In other words, if you count the ends of the city, you only get to that point. However, but if it's already at the other side of the town, then it's considered, the town is only considered to be Dalet Amos, and you get to do the rest, right? So in other words, if the area is within, is within 2,000 amos, it's considered to be Dalet Amos. But if it's outside, then it's considered if it's more than that, then he only goes to that point, right? We saw this earlier. If a person was measuring, he comes to the area of the Kalasami Dasa B'Chatzeir, and then the 2,000 is up because he started it. His central was outside the town, and his 2,000 was up in the middle of the town. He only gets half the city. And however, if his 2,000 goes to the end of the city, let's say it's a small town of 700 amos, right? Then the entire city to him is like Dalad Amos or Masham is Ashar. And therefore, let's say it was 700 Amos. So let's say he counted 300 first, and then he counts the 700, but the 700 is only considered like 4 Amos. So then he gets another 1700 minus Dalad Amos, right? Then we get another 1696 because the city would have been included anyways. But the city was 2,000. Let's say the city was 5,000 Amos. You'd only get 1700 into the city, and that's it. And Amar Ravidi, Ein Elu Ela Divrei Nevios, right? Really, this is Divrei Nevios. This is basically something which is not so logical. This is something that you must have had a Masorah or given as a Nevuah because it doesn't really make sense. Mali Kalas B'Chatzeir, Mali Kalas B'Safir. Why does it make a difference? I understand. If you're measuring and the 2,000 Amos stop in the middle of the city because you started outside the city, then you have to stop there. But if the 2,000 Amos spans the entire city, right, and it goes farther, then the entire city only is considered to be taking up Dalad Amos, and then you continue the count from there. Why should there be any difference? It doesn't make any sense. However, Amarobo, Tarbayu,
is he saying that now that the city is considered 4 Amos, you have an additional 2,000 Amos, or I guess what you said before, or 1,600 Amos?
Right. Yes. Right. As long as when they were, in other words, we're talking about a situation where he makes his makom shvisa, right, outside of the town. All right. Let's say he's 100. Let's say he makes his eruv of 100 amos to the west of the city. Now we're counting east. Okay. Now, if the city is only 600 amos, so the 600 amos don't count in the count when you go eastward. But if the city, it only counts as Dalad Amos. But if the city was, let's say, 5,000 amos, then you just count 2,000 amos from the place of where he started into the city, and only to that point. You can only go to this street, and you can't go to the next street or the next house. Right. That's how it works. And the Rava says, Tarbayat Tanina, actually both of them we can actually see in the Mishnah that we'll see tomorrow. What was the case? Anshe Ir Gedolah Mahalchin Es Kol Ir Katana, the people of a large city, right? So they can go ahead and walk. They can walk throughout the entire small town on Shabbos, right? Then the people of the small town, however, they cannot walk the whole large city. Well, how does that make sense? So my time, what's the reason? Why is that? Because it could be that the small town was within 2,000 of the large town, so therefore the people in the large town can walk the entire thing because therefore it's only Dalad Amos. And the people of the small town, their 2,000 measurement only went halfway or partially into the large city, so therefore they couldn't walk throughout the large city. So why, we understand it's a Farish Mishnah. So why did Rav Idi have such a problem? So Rav Idi, Anshe Tani. He didn't learn it said Anshe can watch this, Ve'ein Anshe Ir Ketana Gedolah. Rather, both of them, the people of the small town were able to walk in the large town. The people of the large town were able to walk in the small town. It was the same thing, right? He talked Anshe Tani. And we're talking about a place of where they placed the Eruv, but it wasn't referring to measuring. It wasn't referring to measuring, right, where the measurement ends, then you get the entire town or not. It was only referring to a place of people in a large town placed the Eruv in a small town, or people in the small town placed their Eruv in a large town, and therefore they got the entire large town. So Gemara says, below it doesn't talk about modate, about measuring and where the 2,000 ends off. But tonight we're going to Mishnah modate when it comes to counting or measuring. Shamru nice and mama, right? Shafilu samidasa kol memara. He says you only get up to 2,000, even in the middle of the city, even in the middle of a cave, you have to stop there. So Gemara answers, no. So over there we're talking about if it goes over here that the chiddush over there wasn't that you stop there. I was talking about a case of if the end of the measurement is beyond the city, then the city only counts as Dalad Amos, the Loitanan. That part was not taught. So in other words, yes, the other area wasn't a chiddush that you stop midway. That we didn't know, right? But the chiddush was that if the 2,000 ended beyond the town, then the town only counts as 4 amos, and you get a total of an additional 1,996 amos. And Amar of Nachman, and just based on this, we'll go real quick. Mantani anshe lo mishtabish, mantani ein anshe lo mishtabish. The one who said the people of the small town can walk the large town is not mistaken. Also, the one who taught that the people of the small town cannot walk the large town also is not a mistake. Why? Mandatani anshe lo mishtabish. The people who taught that the people can go ahead and walk it, then it's not a mistake. Why? We're talking about it. The reason why they can walk is because they place the Erev before Shabbos in the large town. Since they place the Erev in the large town is considered their entire tchum, and they get the whole entire large city. And also the people who said that the people of the small town cannot travel the entire town, also not a mistake. Why? We're talking about a case of when they're measuring, and they measured from the small town and stopped halfway into the big town. Therefore, you only stop there and no more. Right? Actually missing a part of this. How it should read. The people of the large town can go ahead and walk throughout the entire small town. The people of the small town cannot walk the entire large town. But when they measured, but someone was in a large city and places Erev in a small city, or higher biktana v'hinech as Erev be'er, but if there's a small city and places Erev in a large city, mahalech as kula v'chutz alpayim ama. Then that city is like his. Then he can walk his entire city, and then he also gets the 2,000 amos beyond his city. All right, we'll stop here. Everybody, shekach for coming. Have a wonderful day and a good night, and we'll see you guys tomorrow bright and early.